The traveler's stomach turned. His grip faltered on the lantern. He forced himself to whisper, "Steel is still steel, flesh is still flesh." But he knew the lie. He knew these were neither. The bell tolled. The sound shattered him. He fell to his knees, hands pressed against his skull, the lantern crashing beside him. Darkness surged in, swallowing the chamber, leaving only the faint outline of the bell glowing faintly with each vibration. The voices grew louder, rushing into his ears, pouring into his mind. He heard laughter that was his own, screams in his voice. He heard his name, spoken by 100 tongues, stretching, twisting, breaking. He gasped, clawing at the pendant in his hand. He pressed it to his chest, his voice cracking. "Remember yourself, remember." The voices fell silent. The glow of the lantern returned, and before him stood a figure, tall, shrouded in black. Its face hidden beneath a hood, its hands pale, long, fingers too many. In one hand it held a chain that connected to the bell. In the other it held nothing but the weight of the silence that followed. The traveler's breath caught. His sword trembled in his grip. The hooded figure tilted its head, studying him, and when it spoke, its voice was not one but many. You heard the call. The traveler's lips parted, but no words came. The figure took a step closer, the chain dragging across the wet stone. "You came to me, as all must, as all will." The traveler forced his voice, broken but steady. "What are you?" The figure leaned closer. The hood revealed nothing but shadow, yet the darkness moved like something alive. "I am the tower," it said. "I am the bell, I am the drowned, and soon I will be you." The bell tolled again. The chamber went black, and the traveler screamed. The scream echoed, but not outward. It echoed inward, bouncing against the hollows of his skull until it was no longer his scream, but many, hundreds, thousands, spilling from mouths that were not his own. And then silence. The traveler's breath tore in and out of his chest. His hands pressed to his ears, though it did nothing. His lantern lay shattered, its flames smothered in the wet stone. Darkness swallowed him whole. He staggered to his feet, clutching his sword, clutching the pendant. His heart beat in wild, frantic bursts. The bell was gone. The chain drowned were gone. The hooded figure had vanished. He stood alone. The silence pressed close, heavier than the deepest storm. He tried to steady his breath, to remember the shape of himself, but even his own heartbeat sounded strange, out of rhythm, as though it belonged to someone else. A sound stirred. Not the bell, not footsteps, breathing. The walls themselves breath. The stone expanded, contracting in slow rhythm, as though the tower itself drew breath. Each inhale pulled the air from his lungs. Each exhale filled the chamber with a stench of rot and stagnant water. The traveler gagged, his hand over his mouth, yet the air forced itself inside him, thick and suffocating. He stumbled forward, sword raised, though it shook in his hand. His boots splashed into shallow water. The chamber had shifted. No longer the pillars, no longer the bell. Only a corridor of stone stretching on into endless dark. He moved because to stay still was worse. The corridor wound in impossible turns, each wall slick with moisture, each stone breathing, exhaling whispers into his ear. He could not understand them, yet their tone was familiar, mocking, coaxing, pleading. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they wept. Sometimes they spoke his name in voices he almost recognized, the voices of friends, of family long gone. He pressed the pendant to his chest, whispering like a prayer, "Remember yourself." But the tower whispered back, "Yourself is already mine." The words crawled across the walls, not spoken but felt, vibrating through the stone. He gritted his teeth, pressing forward, refusing to yield. The corridor opened suddenly into a vast hall. Torches burned along the walls, though their flames were blue, casting pale light that stretched shadows into grotesque shapes. The hall was lined with statues, men and women carved in exquisite detail, their faces twisted in terror, their arms reaching out as though frozen in their final screams. The traveler's stomach turned. They were too lifelike, too perfect. He stepped closer to one, a soldier with a sword raised, mouth open wide. His skin was stone, but his eyes were wet. The traveler stumbled back, nearly dropping his sword. The statue blinked. A voice echoed from the far end of the hall. "You see them." The traveler whipped around, sword raised. There it was again, the hooded figure, tall, faceless, shrouded in black. It stood at the far end, motionless, its form blurred in the shifting blue light. The traveler's voice cracked as he shouted, "What have you done to them?" The figure tilted its head. Its voice, when it came, was soft but vast, spoken with 1,000 mouths. "They were like you, wanderers, dreamers, fools who thought themselves stronger than the marsh. The tower called and they answered. Now they stand eternal, their fear carved into stone, their voices added to mine." The traveler's grip tightened on his sword. "I will not be yours." The figure's hood lowered, though no face was revealed, only shadow. The shadows writhed as if alive, twisting like serpents. "You already are." The statues began to move. One by one, their stone limbs cracked and shifted. Fingers twitched, heads turned. Their mouths opened, and from within came the sound of the bell, muffled, hollow, but growing louder with each breath. The traveler's chest seized. He backed away, the statues stepping from their pedestals, their stone feet scraping against the floor. Their faces remained twisted in terror, their eyes locked on him, yet their bodies moved with dreadful purpose. He swung his blade at the nearest one, a woman with her hands raised in prayer. The steel struck her stone arm, sparks flying. The arm shattered into fragments, but no blood, no cry. Only the sound of the bell bursting louder from her mouth as she fell. The others pressed closer. The traveler swung again and again, his blade clashing against stone, his arms burning with the effort. For each statue that shattered, 2 more stepped forward, their mouths opening wider, the bell's toll echoing louder, pressing into his skull until he staggered. The hooded figure's voice filled the hall, calm amid the chaos. "You cannot cut stone with steel. You cannot silence what has no voice. You cannot fight what is already within you." The traveler dropped to one knee, clutching the pendant, pressing it to his chest. His vision blurred, his breath ragged. He whispered desperately, "Remember yourself, remember yourself. Remember." A voice cut through his prayer. Not the hooded figure, not the tower, but his own. "Remember what traveler," he froze. The voice had not come from his lips. It had come from the statue nearest him, a man with a sword raised high. A man whose face was his own. The traveler staggered back, horror flooding him. The statue stepped forward, eyes wet, mouth stretching into a twisted smile. "You are already here," it said. "Already stone, already mine." The traveler screamed, swinging his blade wildly, shattering the statue's face into shards. But as the fragments fell, he saw his reflection in each one, his eyes wide, his mouth open in the same silent scream. The hooded figure stepped closer, dragging its chain, the sound scraping across the stone. "Your voice joins us now," it whispered. The bell tolled again. The statues collapsed, their fragments shattering into dust. The torches guttered out, plunging the hall into darkness once more. And when the traveler opened his eyes, he stood not in the hall, but on the spiral stairs once again, his lantern hole in his hand, the air still thick with whispers. Had it been real, or had the tower shown him what awaited? He did not know, but the bell tolled once more, and he kept descending. The stairs twisted endlessly downward. Each step groaned beneath his boots, the sound swallowed almost as soon as it was born. The lantern's flame flickered, weak and unsteady, and every so often he thought it dimmed entirely. Yet when he blinked, it was there again, glowing faintly in his trembling hand. He could no longer tell how long he had walked. Minutes, hours, a lifetime, the spiral wound tighter, dragging him into the earth, or perhaps deeper into something far older than earth. And then the stairs ended. The traveler stumbled into a vast chamber. His lantern light spread outward, rippling across black water that covered the floor. Thin walkways of stone jutted out across the surface, splitting into branching paths that led to doorways carved into the walls. Above, the ceiling was lost in shadow, but faintly he heard dripping water echoing down from some unseen height. The chamber was alive with whispers. They slithered across the walls, echoed down the stone paths, rippled across the water. Some sounded near, brushing against his ear. Others stretched far away, as though carried from miles beneath. Voices, countless voices, tangled together, pleading, mocking, begging, singing. He froze, his chest tightening, the lantern quivering in his hand. One voice rose above the others. It was his own. The traveler's breath caught. He spun, raising his sword, but nothing stood behind him. Only shadows, only water. Then he heard it again, his voice, ragged and broken, whispering from the farthest path. Remember yourself. His grip faltered on the lantern, his stomach twisted. That had been his prayer, spoken again and again in the marsh. But now it was spoken back to him. The whispers grew louder, the water rippled. The traveler forced his feet forward, stepping onto the stone path. Each step echoed with hollow weight, as though he walked not on stone, but on the ribs of something vast and buried. The path led him to a doorway black and yawning, its edges carved with runes worn smooth by age. He raised the lantern, hesitated, then stepped through. The corridor beyond was narrow, suffocating, its walls slick with slime. The whispers followed him here, though now they came with shapes, shadows pressed against the walls, moving though nothing cast them. Long fingers stretched, mouths opened and closed, eyes blinked in the dark. The traveler clenched the pendant tight in his fist until it cut into his skin. "I am not yours," he whispered, his voice trembling. But the tower whispered back in a chorus of 1,000 voices, "You always were." The corridor opened into another chamber, smaller, circular, its walls lined with carvings. He lifted the lantern higher, his breath shuddering as the images revealed themselves. Scenes of war. Armies clashing, fields burning, rivers choked with corpses. And at the center of every carving, the tower stood tall, its shadow stretching across the land. The traveler's throat tightened. His lantern quivered, but he moved closer. In the final carving, he saw not soldiers or kings, but faceless figures, bound in chains, kneeling at the base of the tower. Above them, carved larger than life, was a figure in a hood, holding a chain in one hand and the great bell in the other. The same figure he had seen in the chamber above. The whispers rose to a roar. The traveler staggered back, clutching his head as the voices screamed in his ears. He saw flashes, fields drowning in black water, cities sinking beneath waves, towers rising where blood was spilled. And always, always the bell tolling, shaking the bones of the earth. He dropped to his knees, gasping for air, his lantern flickering wildly. And then silence. When he lifted his head, he was not alone. The hooded figure stood before him. Closer this time. Its presence crushed the air, made the chamber smaller, heavier. The chain in its hand dragged against the stone, sparking faintly. The darkness of its hood writhed like a nest of serpents. The traveler raised his sword, though his arm shook. His voice cracked as he forced the words out. "Why me? Why do you call me?" The figure tilted its head. Its voice spilled out in countless tones, rising and falling like waves. "Because you dream, because you wander, because you are hollow, and the hollow always hunger." The traveler's chest seized. His blade lowered. The figure stepped closer. "Give me your voice," it whispered. "Join the drowned. Add your scream to mine." The traveler's hand shook violently around the pendant. He pressed it to his chest, his breath ragged. He forced out a single word. "No." The hooded figure's head snapped back. The voices roared in fury, the chamber shaking, the carvings cracking and spilling dust. The water below boiled, the air splitting with the sound of the bell, toll after toll, louder, faster, until it became one endless scream. The traveler stumbled, his sword slipping from his hand, the lantern crashing to the floor. Darkness swallowed him whole. He fell not onto stone, not into water, but into something vast, endless, and waiting. The whispers filled him. The tower opened wide, and the traveler was gone. He fell. No end, no bottom, no ground to catch him. Only falling through darkness so deep it felt alive, as though the void itself had hands pressing against him, pulling him down. His scream caught in his throat, swallowed before it left his lips. Even the sound of his fall was stolen. He could not tell if seconds passed or centuries. Then impact, not on stone, not on earth. He struck something soft, spongy, wet. His lantern was gone. His sword was gone. Only the pendant remained, clenched in his hand so tightly the edges had carved blood into his palm. The air here was thick and damp, smelling of rot and salt. He rose slowly, his boots sinking into the ground. The surface beneath him pulsed faintly. It was not soil. It was not stone. It was flesh. The traveler staggered back, choking on the stench, his chest heaving. His hand pressed against the wall, but the wall gave beneath his touch, warm and slick, twitching like muscle. The chamber around him was not carved by tools. It had grown. The tower was alive. A tremor ran through the ground, and he fell to his knees as the entire chamber shuddered. From above, a slow, deep sound echoed downward. Not the toll of the bell, a heartbeat, massive, deliberate, each thud rattling his bones. The whispers returned. But here they were not distant, they were inside him. Words slid across his mind like oil coating his thoughts. "You are within me. You are mine." The traveler pressed the pendant to his chest, shaking his head violently. "No, I am not." The ground quivered beneath him, laughter rolling through the chamber, laughter made of thousands of voices. The walls rippled, bulging outward, and from them faces pressed against the surface. Pale, half-formed, their mouths opening and closing, their eyes rolling blindly. He staggered back, horrified, as the faces whispered in unison. "Remember yourself." They were not his voice this time. They were others, lost souls, the drowned. Faces trapped in the flesh of the tower, whispering endlessly, begging, mocking, repeating their last words forever. One face close to his rasped with a voice barely audible. "Run!" The traveler froze, his throat tight. For a moment he thought he recognized it. The innkeeper. Her face melted back into the wall, consumed by the pulsing mass. The whispers drowned her out. He staggered forward, the chamber stretching on, opening into tunnels that branched like veins. Each path pulsed faintly with the heartbeat above. The air grew thicker, the stench stronger. He chose one at random and stumbled onward. The tunnel wound deeper, narrowing until his shoulders scraped the walls. His breath came ragged, every inhalation filling him with damp, choking air. The ground sloped downward, and before long, he stood ankle-deep in black water. The whispers thickened here, pressing against his ears, filling his skull. Some were in languages he could not know, others in his own tongue. Some mocked, others begged. All of them carried the same weight, submission. He gritted his teeth, pressing forward. The pendant grew colder in his hand, its silver biting into his skin. He whispered like a prayer, "Remember yourself. Remember." But the tower whispered louder, "You are already forgotten." The water rippled. He froze, his lantern gone, only the faint glow of the walls lighting the path. Something moved in the water. At first only ripples, then shapes, hands, pale, thin, stretching up from beneath the surface. Dozens, hundreds. Their fingers brushed against his boots, clutching weakly, trying to drag him down. The traveler staggered forward, splashing through the black water. The hands rose higher, clutching at his legs, his waist. Faces broke the surface, hollow eyes, mud-filled mouths that drowned. They whispered as they pulled, their voices crawling inside his skull. He screamed, tearing himself free, stumbling forward. His boot caught on something bone. Chain, and he crashed face first into the water. It filled his mouth instantly. Bitter, rotting, thick with mud. He thrashed, clawing upward, but hands pressed against his chest, his throat, his face. The whispers swarmed louder until they were no longer voices but one endless roar. And then silence. He stood. The water was gone. The drowned were gone. He was dry. The tunnel had changed. He looked down. In his hand he still held the pendant, but it was no longer silver. It was black, cracked, pulsing faintly with the same heartbeat that shook the walls. He gasped, dropping it, but when it struck the ground it melted into the flesh, vanishing entirely. A voice whispered behind him, "You cannot carry what is already mine." The traveler spun, raising his sword, but he held no sword, only his bare hand. The hooded figure stood before him, close now, too close. Its shadow filled the tunnel, its chain dragging across the flesh with a sound like bones snapping. Its hood yawned open, revealing nothing but a void that pulled at his gaze, dragging him toward it. The traveler tried to speak, but no words came. The figure leaned close, its many-voiced whisper filling his skull. "Your journey ends here. You are drowned." The traveler shook his head violently, tears burning his eyes. His voice broke free at last, raw and desperate. "No, I am alive, I am alive." The tower shuddered. The walls bulged. Faces screamed in unison, their mouths stretching wide as the heartbeat quickened. The ground shook beneath him, splitting, water rushing up through the cracks. The hooded figure raised its chain. The bell tolled, and the traveler fell once more, this time not into water, not into flesh, but into endless white. The white. Blinding, endless, empty. The traveler staggered to his feet, his breath ragged. No walls, no ceiling, no ground that he could truly see, yet something held him, something soft, not air, not stone. The white stretched on in every direction, a horizon with no line, a sky with no sun. His hands trembled. His sword was gone. His lantern was gone. Even the pendant, once his anchor, had vanished. He was alone, or so he thought. Then came the sound.
Not the toll of the bell, not the heartbeat. Something quieter. A drip, slow, steady, falling into nothing. Drip, drip, drip. The sound echoed through the white void, though there was nothing for it to strike. The traveler turned, and in the distance, a shape emerged. Small at first, growing larger with each blink. A door, black, simple, standing alone with no wall to hold it. His chest tightened. His instincts screamed to turn away. But he could not. His feet moved, slow, unwilling, dragging him closer. The door was old, its wood swollen with rot, its surface crawling with black veins. The handle was bone, pale and polished. The closer he came, the louder the drip became until it thundered in his skull. He reached out. His hand trembled. Sweat poured down his face. His breath shook as his fingers brushed the handle, and the door opened by itself. Darkness spilled through, swallowing the white. The traveler stumbled back, shielding his eyes, but the darkness was not empty. Shapes writhed within it. Figures stretched long and thin, their limbs bending in ways no bone should bend. Their mouths opened in silent screams, their eyes white and unblinking. They poured past him, brushing against his skin, cold as ice. Their whispers slithered into his ears, voices of despair and hunger. He clutched his head, falling to his knees as their words drilled into him. "We are drowned. We are drowned. You will join us." The tide of figures surged past him into the white void, vanishing into nothing. And when at last the flow ceased, only the doorway remained. The traveler rose, trembling. His hand closed around nothing, longing for his sword, for the pendant, for anything real. He whispered, voice broken. "Remember yourself," the doorway pulsed, and a voice spoke. Not many voices, not thousands, one, low, deep, vast, "You are already remembered." The traveler froze, his breath caught in his throat. The door widened, growing taller, broader, until it filled the horizon. Its frame cracked and splintered, spilling black liquid that hissed as it touched the white. The sound of the drip became a flood, echoing like rain in a hollow cavern. And from the darkness beyond, something stirred. A hand, enormous, pale, veins black with rot. Its fingers stretched wide, each one longer than the traveler's body. It pressed against the threshold, curling around the frame. The wood cracked. The white shuddered. Then the hooded figure stepped through, but it was not as before. It was vast, towering. Its chain dragged across the void, each link the size of a man. Its hood yawned open, and within was no shadow but a mouth. A maw without teeth, without tongue, only an endless, swallowing dark. The traveler staggered back, his knees weak. His body screamed to flee, but there was nowhere to run. The figure's voice thundered across the void. "You fell into me. You walked willingly. You are mine." The traveler's voice cracked, desperate. "Why me? Why not the others? Why call me?" The figure leaned down. Its void mouth widened. From within came the toll of the bell, each note shattering the white around them, splitting the void into cracks of shadow. "Because you dream," it said, "and the dreamers are always the first to drown." The traveler fell to his knees, his chest heaving, tears burning his eyes. His hands clawed at the void, but there was nothing to hold, nothing to fight with. The figure raised its chain, the links rattling like bones. The traveler screamed, his voice breaking the silence. "I am not yours," the void cracked. The white shattered like glass. The traveler fell again. This time, when he awoke, he was standing. The marsh, the reeds swayed. The mist curled. The tower loomed above him, its black stone wet with rain. The traveler gasped, clutching his chest. His sword was at his side, his lantern in his hand, his pendant around his neck. It was as though nothing had happened. But when he looked into the water, his reflection was not his own. It was hooded, and it smiled. The storm had passed. For the first time in days, the rain had ceased its endless assault, leaving the marsh heavy and still. The tavern sat in silence, its walls dripping with moisture, its hearth nothing but a bed of dying embers. The innkeeper sat slumped against the counter, her eyes red from weeping. She had not slept. She could not. Every time she closed her eyes, she heard it, the bell, tolling in her dreams, dragging her down into water she could not escape. The old man sat across the room, motionless in his chair. His cloak clung to his frail frame, his face gaunt, his hands trembling faintly on the table. He had spoken little since the traveler had gone. The silence between them was heavy, filled only with the creak of wood settling, the occasional sigh of wind against the shutters. At last the innkeeper spoke. Her voice cracked, dry as if dragged across stone. "He's not coming back." The old man's head lifted slowly. His eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, ember bright. "No," he rasped. "He will not." Her hands clenched against the counter. "Then why send him? Why feed it another soul? You knew he would not return." The old man lowered his gaze. "The tower calls who it chooses. We do not send them. We only watch." She stood suddenly, her voice rising, raw with fury. "I am done watching. I am done waiting while it steals them one by one. My husband, my son, now that poor boy. How many more will you let it take before you lift a hand against it?" The old man's voice trembled. "To lift a hand against it is to offer yourself to it. Do you not understand? Every blow, every curse, every defiance feeds it. It thrives on resistance, on fear, on the desperate." The innkeeper's tears spilled again, running down her cheeks. She collapsed back against the counter, her shoulders shaking. "Then what are we to do? Sit here until it comes for us as well?" The old man closed his eyes, his breath shallow. "Yes," he whispered, "that is all we have ever done." The silence stretched. Then, from the marsh it came, not the toll of the bell, not the howl of the wind. Footsteps, slow, heavy, wet. The innkeeper's head snapped toward the door, her breath catching in her throat. The old man's eyes opened wide, his hands clutching the table. The footsteps drew nearer, squelching through the mud, splashing in shallow water. Then silence. The innkeeper's voice trembled. "It's him." The old man shook his head violently. "No, no, it cannot be." A knock, soft, deliberate, 3 times. The innkeeper staggered forward, her heart thundering. She reached for the latch, her hands trembling. The old man cried out, his voice hoarse. "Do not open it," but she already had. The door creaked wide, and the stormless night spilled in. Mist curled through the threshold, carrying the heavy stench of the marsh. And there he stood, the traveler. His cloak dripped with water. His lantern glowed faintly at his side. His sword hung from his belt. His face was pale, but his eyes were calm. Too calm. The innkeeper gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. You came back," the traveler smiled. Slow, cold. His lips moved with words that did not belong to him. "I never left." The old man rose to his feet, his face pale as ash. "Get away from him," he hissed. "That is not the boy, that is the tower." The traveler's head tilted, his smile widening. His voice was soft, but when he spoke, it carried the weight of many. "The tower is awake. The drowned are rising, and soon so will you." The innkeeper staggered back, her eyes wide with terror. The old man raised a trembling hand, as though to ward off the shadow that now filled the tavern. The lantern flickered. The mist thickened, and from the marsh outside, the bell tolled once more. The bell's toll rolled across the marsh, low and hollow, carrying through the fog like thunder beneath the earth. The tavern's walls shook, the shutters rattled, and the dying embers in the hearth hissed into smoke. The innkeeper stumbled back, her breath trembling. The traveler still stood in the doorway, but his shadow stretched unnaturally long across the floor, reaching farther than the lantern's glow should allow. His eyes were calm, too calm, and when they blinked, the faint shimmer of water dripped from his lashes as though he were still submerged. The old man's voice broke the silence. His words were rough, trembling, but his tone sharp as a blade. "Close the door now." The innkeeper shook her head, tears shining in her eyes. "It's him. Can't you see? He came back, he came back." The traveler's smile widened. He took a slow step inside. "Did I ever leave?" he asked softly. His voice was his own, yet beneath it came an echo, a chorus, faint but undeniable, the voices of the drowned speaking through his lips. The innkeeper reached toward him, her hand trembling. You're alive. The old man slammed his hand against the table. No, look at him. Look into his eyes, that is not life. The traveler's gaze turned to him then. His calm expression did not falter, but the shadow stretching across the floor bent toward the old man like a reaching hand. You know me well, he said. You saw me before I came. You heard my call. You cannot stop me now. The old man's face twisted with grief. His knees shook as he leaned heavily against the table. I knew this day would come. But not so soon. Not so soon. The traveler stepped fully into the tavern. The mist followed him, curling low across the floor, spilling around the innkeeper's feet. The air grew colder, damp as the marsh itself. The innkeeper shivered. Her voice broke. Please, if you're still in there, fight it.
The old man cried out. No, but the traveler spoke, and for the first time his voice was only his own broken, raw human. I can't stop it. The drown struck the door again, harder this time. The wood groaned. The latch splintered. The mist thickened until the hearth's embers vanished entirely. The old man pulled the innkeeper back, his voice trembling. Down, into the dark. It is our only chance. The innkeeper sobbed, clinging to him, but together they staggered toward the cellar door. The traveler turned his gaze to them, his face torn, his body trembling as though torn between two wills. His lips parted, whispering words that barely carried through the roar of the drown. Forgive me. The door splintered. The drown poured inside. Water flooded across the floor, carrying with it the stench of rot and the whispers of the dead. Pale faces rose from the mist, hollow eyes fixed on the living. Their mouths opened, spilling mud and stagnant water as they reached forward. The old man and the innkeeper vanished into the cellar, slamming the hatch shut behind them. The tavern drowned in silence. And above the tower loomed, its stone slick with rain, its bell swaying though no wind touched it. The marsh walked. The drowned had risen, and the world had begun to listen. The cellar hatch slammed shut, the wood rattling against its hinges. The old man dropped the heavy iron bar across it, his frail hands trembling with the effort. The innkeeper collapsed against the wall, gasping for breath, her eyes wide and wet. Above them, the tavern groaned. The drowned had poured through the door, their footsteps dragging across the floorboards, wet and uneven. Water dripped through the cracks, pattering into the cellar below. Each drop was loud in the silence. The old man pressed his back against the hatch, his chest heaving. His eyes glowed faintly in the dark, ember bright. We are not safe, he whispered. The innkeeper clutched the wooden angel to her chest, rocking where she sat. Her voice shook. You said the cellar, you said it would hold. The old man shook his head slowly. Hold for a time, not forever. A heavy thud echoed above. Then another. The drowned shuffled through the tavern, knocking against tables, dragging their fingers along the walls. Their whispers seeped through the cracks, faint but suffocating. Join us. The marsh walks. The bell calls. The innkeeper pressed her hands over her ears, sobbing softly. I can hear them. Gods, I can hear them. The old man knelt beside her, his voice hoarse but sharp. Do not listen. They are not prayers, they are chains. Do you understand? Chains meant to bind you. Her hands trembled. I can't shut them out. He pressed the back of his withered hand against her brow. Then remember who you are, say your name, say it aloud. Her lips parted. Her voice cracked, faint and broken, but she spoke it. Her name. Once. Twice. The sound was weak against the flood of whispers, but it was hers. The old man's head bowed. Good, keep saying it. Do not give them your silence. Silence is the door. Above them, the tavern floorboards creaked. Heavy footsteps stopped directly above the hatch. The innkeeper froze, her breath sharp. The old man raised his eyes. A single droplet of water fell through the crack, splashing against the old man's shoulder. Cold, black. Then came the sound. The traveler's voice, calm, hollow, too close. Open it. The innkeeper's eyes filled with tears. Her hands clutched the angel so tightly it cut into her palms. It's him, it's him. The old man's jaw tightened, his voice harsh. No, that is not him. That is what wears him. The traveler's voice came again, firmer this time, echoing with countless others. Open the door. The bar across the hatch rattled violently, as though something pulled it from above. The old man pressed his weight against it, his frail body shaking with effort. Do not move, he hissed. The innkeeper sobbed, covering her ears. He's here, he's alive, he came back. The old man's voice cut through her despair, sharp as steel. If you open that door, you are drowned. Do you hear me? Drowned, the hatch groaned, the wood splintered. The voices above pressed closer, filling the cellar with their whispers. Open, open, open. The old man screamed over them, his voice raw. Say your name now, the innkeeper gasped, choking on her tears, and shouted it. Her name broken but hers, spilling into the cellar, once, twice, again. The whispers faltered, the hatch stilled. For a long moment, silence reigned. Only the sound of their ragged breathing filled the dark. Then from above, the traveler's voice whispered one last time. You cannot hide forever. The footsteps withdrew. The drowned shuffled after him, their wet tread dragging across the tavern. One by one, the whispers faded, but the bell tolled again. Low, distant, patient. The innkeeper collapsed into the old man's arms, sobbing into his cloak. His frail hand rested against her back, his eyes heavy with sorrow. This is only the beginning, he whispered. The cellar fell into silence once more. The cellar held its breath. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence, the drip of water down the stone walls, the soft rasp of the innkeeper's tears, the old man's shallow, trembling breaths. Above, the tavern had gone still, but the weight of the drowned lingered in the air, pressing against the wood like a storm that had only just passed. The innkeeper clutched her small wooden angel against her chest until her knuckles turned white. She whispered her name again and again, her lips trembling, her voice little more than a shiver in the dark. The old man sat slumped beside her, his frail frame bent, his eyes glowing faintly in the dim cellar light. Ember bright, not fire. Not life, something in between. At last the innkeeper spoke, her voice raw. You knew. The old man stirred, his gaze shifting slowly toward her. Knew what? She lifted her tear-streaked face, her eyes wide and hollow. That he would not return. That the tower would take him, that it always takes them. You knew, and still you let him go. The old man closed his eyes, his head bowing. It was not mine to stop. Her voice broke into a sob, sharp with fury. Not yours to stop. You've sat here for years, warning, whispering, watching them walk into the marsh. You speak of chains and voices and drowned souls, but what do you do, old man? Nothing. Her shout echoed against the stone walls. She pressed her hands to her face, shaking. My husband, my son, all of them, gone. And you sit and wait like a coward. The old man's hands trembled where they rested on his knees. His eyes opened again, glowing brighter now, faint sparks dancing in the dark. His voice came soft but heavy. Do you think me a coward? Do you think I do not hear them night after night? Their voices were once louder to me than to anyone else, for I am not untouched by the tower's call. I never have been. The innkeeper froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she lowered her hands, staring at him. What are you saying? The old man lifted his frail hand. For the first time, the ember glow spread down his wrist, through his fingers, flickering faintly like dying fire beneath his skin. He clenched his fist, and the glow dimmed. "I was drowned once," he said. The innkeeper's mouth opened, but no words came. The old man's voice trembled, each word carrying the weight of years. "The marsh took me. Long ago, before this tavern stood, before the wars ended. I marched with kings, I bled with thieves. I fell into the water with the rest, and the tower pulled me down. My body lay beneath the mire. My soul joined the voices." His eyes closed, his face tight with memory. "But something spared me. A spark, a breath that would not extinguish. I do not know if it was grace or curse. I rose again, but not whole, never whole. I have carried this ember ever since." The innkeeper shook her head violently. "No, no, you're lying." He met her eyes, and for the first time the glow in his gaze blazed brighter, undeniable. "You see it. You have always seen it. That is why you feared me." Her chest heaved. She backed away until her shoulders struck the stone wall. "You should not be here. You should not exist." His frail lips curved into a bitter smile. "On that we agree." Above them the tavern stirred, a slow creak of wood. The scrape of tables dragged across the floor, the whisper of water spilling from drowned mouths. The innkeeper flinched, pressing a hand to her chest. "They're still here." The old man tilted his head, listening. His face grew grim. "Not just here. They are searching. The drowned do not seek of their own will. The tower directs them, and if it searches, it has not finished with us." The innkeeper's voice cracked. "Then we'll die down here." The old man's hand trembled against the stone. "Perhaps. But better here in silence than above, where the bell will claim your voice." She shook her head violently, her tears spilling anew. "I don't want silence. I want answers. I want to know why it takes them, why it rises, why it whispers. You say you were drowned, then you know. Tell me, damn you." The old man's chest rose and fell, ragged with breath. For a long time he said nothing. Then, in a voice so low it was almost a prayer, he answered. "The tower does not take, it remembers." The innkeeper froze, her lips parted. "What?" His glowing eyes lifted toward the ceiling, toward the storm-choked sky beyond. "The marsh is a grave, child. So many dead, too many for the earth to keep. Blood fed the water, fear fed the stones, and the tower rose from that memory. It is not built of mortar and rock. It is built of grief, of screams, of voices that could not rest. It tolls the bell not to summon, but to remind, to say, 'I am still here, I have not forgotten you.'" The innkeeper's hand shook violently. "That is not memory, that is hunger." The old man's lips quivered. "Is there a difference?" Above them, a thunderous crack split the silence. The innkeeper screamed, covering her ears. The old man looked upward, his eyes widening. The drowned were tearing at the tavern itself, ripping boards from walls, splintering beams with their pale hands. The old man rose shakily to his feet, his ember glow flickering through his veins. "They mean to pull it down upon us." The innkeeper scrambled to her feet, her voice shrill with panic. "We'll be buried alive." The old man turned to her, his glowing eyes fierce. "Better buried in earth than bound in the tower. Remember that." Another crack echoed above. Dust rained from the ceiling. The voices of the drowned swelled, a chorus of hollow moans and whispers. The tavern groaned under their weight. The innkeeper clutched his arm. "There has to be a way out." The old man's gaze dropped to the far wall of the cellar, where the stone was damp and weak. "Perhaps there is, but it leads into the marsh." Her face went pale. "The marsh," he nodded grimly. "It is death either way. But in the marsh, there is still a chance to run. The ceiling above cracked. Water spilled down in streams. The drowned howled in unison, their voices pressing closer. The old man took her hand, his ember glow flickering brighter now, fire dancing faintly beneath his skin. If you choose the marsh, I will help you. But once you step into it, it will see you. It will hear you. It will remember you. The innkeeper's lips trembled, her breath ragged. Above the tavern's beams groaned. The drowned clawed and tore. Time slipped away. She whispered almost to herself, I don't want to be remembered. The old man's ember eyes glowed, sorrow and fire mingling within them. None of us do, but the tower remembers all the same. And with that, he struck the wall. Stone shattered. Black water poured in. And the cellar drowned. The wall gave way. Stone shattered with a roar, and the marsh poured in. Black water surged into the cellar, filling it in a violent rush. The innkeeper screamed as the icy flood knocked her off her feet, pulling her under. She thrashed, clawing for breath, her arms flailing against the current. The old man seized her wrist, his ember-lit veins glowing through the dark water. He dragged her upward, his frail body trembling with effort, and forced her toward the broken wall where the water rushed in. His voice broke above the roar. Swim. If you want life, swim. The innkeeper gasped, water choking her lungs. She flailed forward, kicking against the flood, her body scraping against jagged stone as she was dragged into the marsh. The current seized her, pulling her out into the night. The world beyond was no kinder. The marsh had risen. The village streets were gone, swallowed beneath black water. Houses leaned and groaned, their roofs the only thing still visible, their chimneys spitting mist instead of smoke. The tavern itself stood half submerged, its roof caving as the drowned tore it apart plank by plank. Their hollow eyes burned in the mist, dozens of them, hundreds, all turning toward the two survivors swept into the open. The innkeeper gasped, her arms flailing. She broke the surface, coughing, choking. Her eyes darted wildly, searching for the old man. He emerged beside her, his cloak dragging in the water, his glow faint beneath the surface. She reached for him, her voice shrill. They see us, the drowned turned in unison. Their mouths opened, water spilling out in endless streams. The bell tolled, low, deep, endless. The sound rattled the air, shook the water beneath them, pressed into their chests until they could not breathe. The innkeeper screamed, her hands clutching her ears. The old man grimaced, his ember glow burning brighter, defying the sound. He seized her hand. Do not listen, swim. They kicked against the mire, dragging themselves between the drowned. Pale faces rose from the water, hands reaching, mouths yawning wider. Some whispered, some screamed. All moved toward them. The innkeeper sobbed. They're everywhere. The old man's grip tightened, his glow pulsing. Then we go through. They swam. The marsh closed in around them, reeds bending like skeletal fingers, mist swallowing the world until there was no sky, no shore, only black water and whispers. A drowned soldier burst from the depths before them, his broken helm fused to his skull, his rusted blade dragging in the water. The innkeeper shrieked. The old man thrust his glowing hand forward. Ember light flared through his skin, searing the soldier's pale face. It howled, smoke rising from its hollow sockets, and sank back beneath the mire. The old man gasped, the glow in his veins dimming again. He pressed onward, dragging her behind him. The bell tolled again. The water shook. The drowned surged closer. Hands brushed their legs, their arms, their throats. The innkeeper screamed, kicking wildly. Her foot struck a pale face. Mud and teeth burst from its mouth as it sank, only for two more to rise in its place. Faster, the old man rasped. Do not let them take you whole. Through the mist, the tower rose, closer now. Black stone slick with water, its hollow windows glowing faintly with pale light. The bell swayed at its peak, though no wind moved. Its shadow stretched across the marsh, swallowing the survivors. The innkeeper's chest seized. Her limbs went weak. No, no, not there, anywhere but there. The old man's ember eyes burned. It is already everywhere. You cannot run from it, only through it. The drowned closed in, a ring of pale faces rising from the mire. Their whispers grew louder, pressing into the survivors' skulls until their thoughts cracked. Join us, join us, join us. The innkeeper clutched the angel to her chest, sobbing. I can't, I can't. The old man turned to her, his glow flaring brighter now, his veins burning like molten lines through his skin. Then give me your fear, I will carry it. His hands shook, his breath came ragged. But you must swim. Do you hear me? Swim, the drowned lunged. The old man roared, his body flaring in sudden fire. Ember light burst from him, casting the water into seething steam. The drowned shrieked, their pale skin blackening, their hollow eyes bursting in smoke. The innkeeper gasped, shielding her eyes from the blaze. The old man's body shook violently, his glow burning through him as if it would tear him apart. He forced himself forward, dragging her with him through the seared ring of drowned. The bell tolled. The fire dimmed. The drowned surged again. They reached a small rise of stone, an island in the mire, barely large enough to stand upon. The innkeeper collapsed onto it, coughing, her lungs burning. The old man dragged himself beside her, his glow faint now, flickering like a dying coal. The drowned gathered in the water around them, dozens of pale faces staring up, their mouths yawning, their whispers rising. The marsh had become a sea of the dead. The innkeeper clutched her angel, sobbing. There's no escape, no escape. The old man's head bowed, his voice barely a whisper. Escape is a dream. Survival is a lie, but perhaps we may endure. The innkeeper looked at him with hollow eyes. Endure. For what? His ember glow pulsed faintly as he lifted his gaze toward the tower. To see what it truly wants. The bell tolled again. The drowned shrieked in unison, their hollow eyes turning upward to the tower. And slowly, with groans of ancient stone, the tower's door began to open. The door yawned wide. Black stone groaned as the tower split, its entrance opening like a wound. Mist poured from within, rolling across the marsh, thicker, darker, swallowing the pale light of the drowned. The bell swayed above, though no wind moved it, its toll trembling through the mire, through the survivors' bones, through the marrow of the earth itself. The innkeeper clutched her angel to her chest, her knees trembling on the slick stone island. Her breath came sharp and ragged. No more, she whispered. Please, no more. The old man stood beside her, his body bent, his glow flickering faintly through his skin. Each ember-light pulse shook his frame as though his own body resisted it. His eyes burned as he stared at the tower's opening. It calls us, he rasped. It will not let us go. The drowned shifted in the water, their hollow eyes turning upward to the door. Their mouths opened wider, streams of black water spilling into the mire. Some began to wade toward the island, pale arms outstretched. The innkeeper screamed, clutching at the old man's arm. We can't go in there. You know what waits. You've seen it. The old man's voice shook, but his gaze did not falter. And if we do not go in, then it will come out. The drowned reached the stone island. Their fingers clawed at the edges, their nails scraping against rock. Dozens of them, pale and relentless, pulling themselves upward. The air grew heavy, stinking of rot and stagnant water. The old man's ember glow flared. He staggered forward, placing himself between the innkeeper and the rising drown. His frail hands lifted, glowing brighter until the skin began to crack, lines of fire seeping through like molten rivers. "Stay behind me," he rasped. The drowned lunged. The old man roared, his glow bursting outward in a wave of searing light. The water boiled, the drowned shrieked, their bodies writhing in smoke as they fell back into the mire. The innkeeper shielded her eyes, gasping at the blaze. When it dimmed, the old man fell to his knees, his body shaking violently. His skin smoldered, cracks glowing faintly along his arms and chest. The innkeeper rushed to him, grabbing his shoulders. "You'll burn yourself out," she cried. His ember eyes lifted to hers, dim but resolute. "I am already ash. What remains is only fire." The ground beneath them shook. The tower's door had opened fully now, its shadow stretching across the marsh. The drowned moaned in unison, their hollow voices rising into a single, endless chant. "Come inside, come inside, come inside." The innkeeper sobbed, pressing her forehead against the old man's shoulder. I can't go in." His trembling hand lifted, pressing the back of his fingers gently against her cheek. "You can, because you must. If you do not, then the tower will walk and nothing will remain." She shook her head, her voice breaking. "Why me?" His eyes closed, his glow flickering faintly. "Because it remembers you. Because it has already begun to whisper your name." Her stomach turned. She staggered back, clutching the angel to her chest. "No!" the drowned shrieked in unison. Their pale hands clutched at the stone island, their bodies dragging upward once more. The old man rose unsteadily to his feet, his ember light flaring weakly. He turned to her, his voice hoarse but sharp. "Choose, the marsh or the tower. The marsh will drag you down. The tower will take you in. One is death. The other is something worse." The ground shook again. The bell tolled. The tower's door pulsed wider, its black mist curling like fingers reaching outward. The innkeeper stared into its dark mouth, her tears blurring her sight. Her lips trembled. "If I go in, will it end?" The old man's ember eyes glowed faintly, sorrow burning within them. "No, but perhaps it will begin anew." The drowned lunged. The old man flung his arms wide, his glow bursting brighter than ever before. Fire ripped through his frail body, cracking him open from within, light spilling from every seam. His roar echoed across the marsh, burning the drowned in waves, their bodies collapsing into smoke and ash. The innkeeper shielded her face, screaming his name. His body shook, burning brighter until he was nothing but a figure of flame. He turned to her, his ember eyes now blazing with fire. "Go!" The drowned swarmed again. The bell tolled. The tower groaned. The innkeeper clutched her angel, her tears streaming. She staggered forward, stepping into the black mist of the tower's door. Cold swallowed her. The last thing she heard was the old man's roar, a sound of fire-defying water, of ember-defying ash before the tower sealed behind her. Inside there was only silence. The innkeeper opened her eyes. She stood in darkness, alone, but the bell still tolled, and in the distance she saw him, the traveler, standing beneath the bell, his hooded shadow long and waiting. The door sealed behind her without sound. The innkeeper staggered forward, clutching her angel to her chest, her breath shallow and broken. The black mist closed in around her, swallowing every trace of the marsh, every echo of the drowned, even the roar of the old man who had burned himself into ash. Here there was only silence, silence and the tolling of the bell. It was faint at first, as though carried from great distance, but each note pressed into her chest, rattled her ribs, and left her weaker with every toll. She raised her head, tears blurring her eyes, and in the darkness she saw the bell, suspended by chains in the vast hollow above, its cracked surface glowing faintly, dripping with black water. Beneath it, standing tall and motionless, was the traveler. Her heart froze, her lips parted, a sob escaping. You came back." He lifted his head slowly. His face was pale, his eyes calm, too calm. His cloak dripped with water, though no rain fell. And when he spoke, his voice was not only his own. "I never left." The innkeeper clutched the angel tighter, shaking her head. No, you're alive, I see you." The traveler stepped forward. His movements were slow, deliberate, each step sending ripples through the water pooled across the chamber floor. His shadow stretched impossibly long, curling along the walls, climbing toward the bell itself. He stopped a few paces from her, his hollow eyes fixed upon hers. "Alive," he murmured. His lips curved into a faint, sorrowful smile. "What is alive when the tower remembers everything?" She staggered back, her breath ragged. "You're not him, you're not." His voice grew sharper, echoing with countless others. "I am him, and I am not. I am the drowned, I am the bell. I am the whisper that wakes you in the night. I am every name the marsh ever kept." The innkeeper sobbed, clutching the angel to her chest until the wood cracked. "Then kill me, take me, end it." The traveler tilted his head. His shadow stretched farther, curling around her feet, cold and wet. "End it," he whispered. "No, the tower does not end. It endures, as will you." He lifted his hand. The bell tolled. The sound split her skull. She dropped to her knees, screaming, her hands clutching her ears, though it did nothing. The angel slipped from her grasp, clattering into the black water. The traveler watched, his calm face unchanging, as though sorrow and hunger lived within him both. The whispers rose, faces pressed against the walls of the chamber, pale and hollow, their mouths spilling water, their eyes rolling blindly. Their voices tangled together until they were one. "Remember yourself. Remember yourself. Remember yourself." The innkeeper gasped, choking on sobs. Her name caught in her throat, slipping from her lips. Once, twice, each time weaker. The voices pressed closer, louder, drowning her words in their flood. She collapsed, her cheek pressed against the wet stone. Her vision blurred. The traveler loomed above her, his shadow stretching long and endless. "You cannot fight it," he said softly. "You cannot run, you cannot hide. The tower remembers." She wept, whispering her name again, a broken sound swallowed by the bell's toll. The traveler bent down, his cold hand lifting her chin. His hollow eyes gazed into hers, sorrow and hunger mingling in their depth. His voice was gentle now, almost kind. "But you do not need to remember yourself. The tower will remember for you." The bell tolled. The chamber went white. She opened her eyes. She stood in her tavern. The fire roared in the hearth, warm and bright. The tables were full of travelers, laughing, drinking, speaking in voices rich with life. Her husband smiled at her from across the counter. Her son ran through the room, his laughter bright. Her lips trembled, tears spilled down her cheeks. No, this isn't real." Her husband's warm hand touched hers. "It is. You're safe. We're all safe. The storm is over." Her son laughed, hugging her legs. "Mama, the marsh is gone," she sobbed, clutching him, pressing her face into his hair. My boy," the fire roared brighter. The tavern swelled with warmth. The laughter grew louder, richer, filling every corner of the room. But in the hearth, beneath the flames, she saw water, black, rising. Her son's laughter turned to whispers. Her husband's smile froze, water spilling from his lips. The travelers at the tables turned, their faces pale, hollow-eyed. Their laughter became moans, their mouths spilling mud. The tavern dissolved. The innkeeper screamed. She was on the wet stone once more. The traveler's hand gripped her chin, his hollow eyes fixed upon hers. The bell tolled above, endless, drowning her scream. The traveler spoke, his voice echoing with countless others. The tower remembers, and in the black water at her feet her reflection changed. Her eyes went pale, her mouth filled with water, her voice joined the chorus.